undercover to investigate allegations of fraud against Minnesota's biggest real estate company. Thousands of Minnesota homeowners have allegedly been cheated out of hundreds of millions of dollars. Good evening. We begin tonight with a KARE 11 expose that affects anyone thinking about buying or selling a home.
EdinaRealty, Minnesota's biggest real estate company, is facing two huge class action lawsuits with allegations ranging from fraud to racketeering.
It involves allegations of fraud and racketeering against EdinaRealty, Minnesota's largest real estate company. The charges stem from two class action lawsuits. Together, those lawsuits claim EdinaRealty has cheated 30,000 Minnesotans out of $240 million. Tonight, KARE 11's Mark Daly and photographer Tom Impey go undercover to investigate those allegations.
And where do we find out how to, fill out the back side of this when we...
Oh, if you wanted to fill out the back side of this form, you would do it right now.
Oh.
If you've ever bought or sold a house, you know how complicated and confusing the process can be. Thousands of people each year buy or sell through EdinaRealty, the biggest real estate company in Minnesota.
Take a look around and I'll try and help you with any questions you may have.
Critics say many of those people don't realize what they're getting into.
The consumer is getting ripped off, in my opinion.
Jim Crawford worked as an agent for EdinaRealty for 6 years. Crawford says when Edina agents represented the buyers and the sellers of the same house, one side or the other was sometimes harmed by the release of confidential information. For example,
informations that were supposed to be kept confidential on the part of the seller were often shared with the buyer, which would enable the buyer to get a lower price.
EdinaRealty officials say they never reveal confidential information without permission. But that's exactly what's being alleged in two class action lawsuits, both filed in the past few weeks. Together, the lawsuits allege fraud, racketeering, and breach of fiduciary duties. The plaintiffs claim that Edina's realtors frequently acted as undisclosed dual agents. That means the company allegedly misled buyers and sellers into believing that they each were getting exclusive representation.
The problem with this conflict of interest is that the agent's loyalty is to the transaction and not to either of the parties.
Doug Kelly headed the white-collar crime unit for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minneapolis for 7 years. Now, Kelly is a co-counselor on one of the lawsuits against EdinaRealty.
We estimate that there's over 30,000 victims with $240-some million in commissions that were improperly paid as a result of undisclosed dual agency.
Jamie Bikuski says she's one of those victims. Jamie bought this house last summer with the help of EdinaRealty agents. She says she was led to believe the house had its own underground sprinkling system. But she says she was not told that it might be in her best interest to find a realtor from another company because the seller was also represented by EdinaRealty.
This is what I find out is supposedly my sprinkler system.
And because of this dual agency situation, do you think you got the best possible representation and the best possible deal on this house?
Oh, definitely not. I think I could have got it for a lower price, and I would have had more help solving problems that came up both after the purchase agreement was signed and after the closing.
EdinaRealty officials say Jamie was aware of the dual agency situation and that the confusion over the sprinkler was simply a mistake.
I'm not fully aware of why that occurred, but I don't think that mistake occurred out of the situation of dual agency, that anybody was attempting to take advantage of anybody. I think there
Arnie Rovick adds that EdinaRealty agents can avoid conflict of interest problems, partly because they're independent contractors. It even says so right in Edina's listing agreement. Legal experts disagree.
Despite the fact that's what the agreement says, as a matter of law, that is simply not true.
Experts say it is legal for companies like EdinaRealty to represent both the buyers and the sellers of the same house, but only if the agency warns both sides about the potential conflicts of interest. Mark and Marilee Forseth agreed to help us find out what kind of warning EdinaRealty has been giving its clients. We set up this hidden camera in the Forseth's living room and then secretly videotaped an Edina agent making his sales pitch. The Forseths told the agent that they might be interested in having EdinaRealty represent them in the sale of their house. But when they asked what would happen if a potential buyer wanted to be represented by Edina too, instead of explaining the potential conflicts of interest, the agent basically told the Forseths not to worry. business.
Well, what if another Edina agent came in on your listing? Who represents who?
I still, regardless of who comes in, I represent you. In fact, I'll show you the person's name. If another...
So it doesn't matter that they're with the same company?
No.
We brought our videotape of that conversation to David Kirkman, an adjunct professor at William Mitchell Law School. Kirkman says the agent failed to explain to the Forces that in dual agency situations, he would also be required by law through EdinaRealty to represent the buyers.
A lot of the hard issues that were asked about sort of got deflected, and I don't think there was a true full disclosure of the full ramifications of the dual agency.
We also wanted Arnie Robick of EdinaRealty to give us his reaction to the tape, but he declined.
Okay, you don't want to look at this and you don't want to give your interpretation of whether or not this agent is fully disclosing the nature of it.
I'm going to hear this question in the courtroom, and I don't want to answer it here in public, no.
Doug Miller is a real estate attorney and a consultant on one of the lawsuits against EdinaRealty. Miller says he wrote letters to the State Commerce Department for 3 years, complaining about undisclosed dual agency without any results.
The problem with this is it's so hideous is that when you have undisclosed dual representation, the client never knows. The consumer never knows what's going on. They never know how they've been harmed. They don't know enough to even complain. I pointed this out to the Commerce Department. It's to no avail.
We can't be in every real estate office or at every closing. And I would again encourage you or Mr. Miller, if you've got specific facts, we'll get on it tomorrow morning. But we need specifics. We need some harm.
Meanwhile, if you're thinking about buying or selling a house in Minnesota and you don't want to be harmed, consumer advocates suggest finding an agency that represents you and you alone, or you could end up with an unexpected housewarming gift. 2 notes here. For the record, EdinaRealty denies any allegations of any wrongdoing in both lawsuits. Second, the Commerce Commissioner wants to hear about other undisclosed dual agency complaints. If you think you've been a victim, you can call 612-296-2488. In Greater Minnesota, the number is 1-800-652-9742. We'll repeat these numbers later in the broadcast. Paul and Di, back to you.
Mark, 3 years is a long time for the Commerce Department to hear about alleged problems with really not doing anything. Why is that?
Well, as you heard Mr. Miller explain, the Commerce Department needs to hear specific allegations that there have been damages before the Commerce Department is willing to investigate. I'm told by Commerce Commissioner Burt Mackesy that that will change. If there are specific allegations that come in, they will investigate immediately.
All right. Thanks, Mark.